All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I have the beautiful Jennifer Kolari here. Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, me too. We were just talking before we jumped on live that in a parenting conference that Lara Dawn and I put on a couple of months ago, I was not able to be live on the interview with you. Lara did that, and I was, kicking myself, and I think it was the time difference or something like that. But listening to you speak and the wisdom that you shared from your heart for parents. And I know we're going to touch on some of that stuff today because I just want it to reach as many hearts and minds and people as possible. So I'm very excited to have you on and kind of pick your brain about, we're talking about anxious kids and parenting anxious kids, and we've called the session today From Worriers to Warriors. So I think this is, here at least, it's a huge topic for parents and something that we're really struggling with, and it does pull your heartstrings. And I think, is that sort of the similar situation over there in the US with you?
And Canada and Europe. The anxiety really, it was pre-COVID, it was already rising for lots of different reasons, which we can touch on. But I think since it's become an epidemic in and of itself. So, and not just the kids, parents are anxious. Everybody's anxious.
Yes, yeah, it's sort of universal now. It doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter where you live, or what job you have. There are people all over the world. I think we're really feeling the effects of a lot of what's going on. So I think this is a very timely interview and chat that we're going to do.
I'm
so
glad.
So let me tell you all a little bit about Jennifer. If you don't already know some of her work, if you don't follow all, her work on all different platforms, which I will put down below sort of as we jump off. But I want to tell you a little bit about her, just so you kind of get a sense of who Jennifer is and her work. So she is from Connected Parenting. That is her organization, I guess. And as you can probably tell from her accent, she's over in the States and I'm over in here in Australia. So we're kind of across the seas. And she is one of the US's leading parenting experts. She's a highly sought after international speaker. She's a founder of Connected Parenting, as I just said, and a child and family therapist with a very busy practice in San Diego and Toronto. Is that right?
Yes, I'm from Canada originally. So yes.
Yeah, wonderful. She's also the author of Connected Parenting, How to Raise a Great Kid. And I love this one. You're ruining my life, but not really. Surviving the teenage years with Connected Parenting. So they're brilliant. I love that you're able to, collect some of your knowledge and some of your work and what you know benefits parents and put that into something that parents can easily access. And I'm sure the feedback from those books has just been, overwhelming because, as we said, a lot of parents are looking for support right now and have been for a while. So that's incredible. And I know you have your Connected Parenting weekly podcast as well, and you're the co-host of the Mental Health Comedy Podcast. Tell me quickly, the Mental Health Comedy Podcast.
Yeah. Sounds a bit like a misnomer, but anyway, it's fascinating. I co-host the show with Ed Krasnick, who's a comedian, and we interview well-known comedians and entertainers about their mental health. So we talk about what they go through. It's very funny, but also very real, very honest. And then I make sure in each of those episodes that I offer strategies, like an actual tangible thing that you can practice, because mental health is a practice.
Yeah. And are you able to, I'm curious, are you able to share, do you have a story or something that stuck with you from either your own podcast or the mental health comedy one?
Sure. Well, I'm probably just a composite. Like, these are people who are incredibly successful, who are on stage, who are speaking in front of, millions of people. But before they go on the stage, they're a wreck. They're anxious. They don't believe in themselves. They're having panic attacks, or some of them are experiencing real depression where they can't get out of bed. And all of them are so open about what they experience, and also really want to speak about mental health in a general way. So we reduce some of the stigma about it. And I definitely find, especially the comedians, they're so sharp and they're so funny, and they have minds that can like break things down into little pieces to find what's humorous, right? But that same ability to break things down can work against them. So, 11 o'clock at night when they're trying to go to bed, their brain is fractalizing and breaking down everything into, and then it just becomes worrying and fractalizing and what ifing. And that's really what anxiety is all about, which we'll talk about more today, but it's a real joy to be part of that show. So.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I can only imagine kind of being, I would love to be like a fly on the wall in in the podcast listening in. That would be brilliant. But obviously we can get all the episodes, I lost my words, episodes online. So definitely recommend you guys check some of those out. So, in what we're talking about today, we know that when, let's say we have a child with anxiety. I have 2 kids and one of them has really, I guess, moved through a lot of her anxiety that we had at the start of the year for school. And I was pulling out all my tools, all my tricks. So as well as obviously being a parent coach, I do anxiety therapy for kids and teens. And I was, having to really test myself. And being a parent, I think, is different from the experience of being a therapist or a clinician. And I really had to, it kind of kept me on my toes, I want to say. And
your own anxiety as a parent, watching your child suffer and seeing life move on, and they're not doing what, they're too scared to try things. And we experience our own anxiety, which we'll talk about, because that's very real.
Yeah, it so is. And so, when we parent a child with anxiety, we often feel helpless. We try to be patient. I'm there as well. And sometimes we end up bribing or pleading or comparing our kids to others. Our brain kind of naturally goes there.
Or doing them, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And sometimes we try to use logic to talk our kids out of anxious moments, and we try to reason with them. But as we're going to talk about, anxiety doesn't work that way. It kind of just goes, like it bounces off, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that can be really hard. And so we can end up very frustrated, and we can, watching the struggles with the pain that our kids are going through with anxiety. So I'm really excited to sort of talk to you today. I know we're going to talk about maybe we'll touch on the calm technique that you have. But maybe let's first talk a little bit about, if you can explore, I think, the parent's experience when it comes to parenting an anxious child, because I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people watching.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing that happens, and we sort of touched on it already, is we sort of see their life flash before our eyes. If they can't do this, what else can't they do? This is, it's getting bigger for them. And then you just want to keep pushing them, and it's this crazy sort of balance between protecting them and pushing them, right? And it's hard to know where that is. And so there's so much fear about how to help them be their best selves. And you never know, when do I push? When do I protect? Where is that line? And that's really tricky. And then, as I said, parents can become incredibly anxious on their own. Often parents will say to me, they wake up in the morning and the first thought is like, oh, right? And that sort of like stomach dropping, oh my gosh, my child, we're going to have an issue because we have this today, or they're going to have an issue going off to school, or they're scared of germs, or whatever it is. And you just see them suffering so much that it's just really hard to watch, and you want to help them, but you can't. This is something they have to figure out.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think it feels like we can be walking on eggshells, not knowing if we, like you said, do we push them a little bit outside their comfort zone, or is that going to create a meltdown? What do we do?
Yep. Well, and I guess probably the most important thing is to really understand what's going on when someone is anxious. So I think the first thing, and when I work with kids, because I also do work with kids one-on-one, is I want them to understand anxiety is not bad. Anxiety is a really good thing. You need anxiety. If you don't have anxiety, you're going to cross the street without looking. You're going to eat a moldy sandwich. You're going to tell your boss to shut up. Like, you have to have a certain amount of anxiety. Anxiety is also connected to motivation. So it's an essential human emotion, and none of us would be alive without it. The issue is when there's too much anxiety, when there's so much anxiety that it's not integrated properly. And so the frontal lobe, talk about the brain for a second, but the frontal lobe is the part of the brain that inhibits and organizes and prioritizes and motivates and decides when something's life-threatening and when it's not, and when it's a big deal and when it isn't, and all of those things. And children don't have a fully formed frontal lobe yet. In fact, they won't until almost 30, but at least not a functioning one as a sort of adult one until at least 18 or 19. So what I always say to parents, and this is what makes the anxiety piece so hard for parents, is you're not actually a parent. You're a substitute frontal lobe. Right? Your job is to do all that inhibiting, organizing, prioritizing, motivating. You have to do that prosthetically for your child until they can have a frontal lobe of their own. And that's why, 8-year-olds don't have apartments. They don't know when to go to bed. They don't know when to eat. They don't know what's scary and what's not scary. They get scared of things that aren't scary, and they don't get scared of things that aren't scary. And so that's our job, is to really be that substitute frontal lobe. The midbrain's job is to be the security system in the brain, freak out, right? Its job is to decide, is this life-threatening? Its job is to override the frontal lobe in case it is life-threatening. And so what happens is, as we're trying to be that frontal lobe and inhibit and organize and prioritize our children, their midbrain, because they don't have a fully formed frontal lobe, is pushing back on us. No, not now, in a minute, I can't go, it's too scary, I can't wear this, whatever's going on, they're pushing back, and you're trying to mitigate that. And that is why, when parents say to me, like, how come I have to say things 50,000 times? Because you're a substitute frontal lobe, and it's a thankless job sometimes, and it's an exhausting job, and you're often doing it for multiple kids and yourself, and sometimes even a spouse. So there's a lot of frontal lobing happening when you're a parent, and a lot of pushback. So anxiety itself it's very powerful, and it can take over. It can literally throw the frontal lobe offline. So the example I usually give people is, if you were crossing the street and you saw a car coming at you, you're not going to use your frontal lobe. Oh, it's coming very fast. I could go this way. It might be faster if I go that way. What's going to happen to me, right? I'm going to get hit by a car. So the brain goes, screams and runs to the side of the road. And then you're like, oh my God, that was close. So it is very time sensitive. There is no time to think, plan, do anything. Your job is to run or to fight back, fight or flight or freeze. And that's sort of the job of the midbrain, the security system in the brain. And the other thing to understand about anxiety is when there's been sort of an elevated level of anxiety, even just once, but certainly over time, the brain it wants to save us. Anxiety is not the enemy. It loves us. It wants to keep us safe. It wants to protect us. It's just overdoing the job a little bit. But when something happens, it keeps all the cortisol and adrenaline and all of the hormones that cause the brain to stay in fight or flight elevated, in case the lion comes back, in case the village, gets attacked again. When there's been a big scare, it makes sense us in terms of survival to stay escalated in case that threat comes back. And so the anxiety, especially with kids, doesn't always get a chance to cool. And kids are often sort of at that. I talk about it like if you're boiling water to make pasta, right? So it's boiling, and then you take it off, it instantly stops boiling. But if you put it right back on, it boils again. That's kind of what an anxious child is like. So it's a self-preservatory emotion. It loves us so much. And one of the examples that I give when I speak to kids also, and unless they're afraid of dogs, I use the analogy of a dog, and I call it the anxiety dog. So if you imagine that your anxiety is like the guard dog of your brain, and you go to the pet store, and you get this big goofy dog that's just going to keep you safe. And the dog's like, I love you so much. I'm going to do the best job. I'm going to keep you safe. This is going to be great. And at first the dog just barks at, suspicious looking people outside. And then people keep walking, and it goes, oh, I think they kept walking because I'm really good at this. I'm going to bark at everyone outside, not just suspicious looking people. And then eventually the dog's like, you know what? I'm going to bark at people inside too, because you never know. People are suspect. And then eventually I'm going to bark at anyone that comes near my person. And then eventually the dog's like, you know what? I'm just going to lie on my person's chest. I'm going to lie on their chest. I'm going to lick their whole face. I'm not going to let them get up, and they're going to be so safe. And kids, if they love dogs, this is a great analogy. If they're terrified of dogs, choose something else. But why I love this analogy is when you have kids, and CBT is an amazing, that's really the primary way to treat anxiety. But I find that when you start talking about, or if parents use language like, we have to deal with your anxiety, we have to get rid of your anxiety, and you talk about it as the negative or as the enemy, there's nothing more scary for an anxious person than telling them you're going to get rid of their anxiety, because they think they're going to feel just as anxious, but now they don't have this warning system anymore. So I teach them, you know what? We don't want to get rid of the dog. We love the dog. We adore the dog, but we can't breathe because it's sitting on our chest. And so we want the dog to sit in the dog bed and have a nice sleep and just come out if we actually need it. So we talk about training the anxiety, or integrating the anxiety instead of conquering, getting rid of, because that's that kind of language, as you would know, really spikes anxiety. And as soon as kids feel like, oh, you're trying to do a strategy, you're trying to teach me that's going to make something that's going to make my anxiety go away, the voice in their head is like, you don't use those strategies. Are you kidding me? Do that. Just try to get rid of me. You need me. You need me. And that's why you're always in this clash all the time with your kids.
Wow, it's such a beautiful explanation. And is that something that, well, obviously, as you said, you work with kids. Would you explain some of that, aside from the analogy, some of the brain science and what's happening in their brain? Would you explain that to kids? Is that something that can be helpful for parents to consider?
Yes, absolutely. We talk about the frontal lobe. I call it the thinking brain. And then you got your thinking brain and your feeling brain, and then I call it the thinking gate. So once they get really anxious, that thinking gate slams shut and they are now reacting to their world instead of responding to their world. And I teach them about cortisol and I teach them about oxytocin. So we'll get into the calm technique in a moment, but one of the most powerful things you can do for your child is to really increase the levels of oxytocin that they're receiving. So snuggling and cuddling and not in a clingy, fearful way, but like just a really love-based way. That actually is the best medicine because it's a cortisol blocker. So the higher the levels of oxytocin in the body and in the bloodstream, the lower the levels of cortisol. So we'll get into that in a moment, but I talk about all of that with kids, and we do a whole book where we draw pictures and we have all kinds of, we make it really fun. And kids like Harry Potter, then it's all about Harry Potter. If they like Star Wars, and it's all about Star Wars. And they name their fear Volcanox or whatever they're naming it. And then it becomes us or the parent and them trying to work with the anxiety to train it. And we have some really nice success doing that.
Yeah, I bet. I think I love that we, that approach of not trying to get rid of or overcome or fix, get rid of the anxiety, because as you said, it's a very normal, natural, healthy and helpful emotion. So it's not something we want to get rid of, and we don't want to live without it, but let's not let it sit on your chest. And I love the dog that's sitting on the chest, because it can feel like you guys watching will know, it can sometimes feel, especially if you experience anxiety, it can feel like that tension and that pulling and that weight I think that is something that they can really kind of connect with.
And it is an absolutely miserable feeling when you're that anxious. It is absolutely, it's indescribable. Like they just want to climb out of their body and run down the street. Like it is an unbearable feeling in many, many ways. And so having as many tools as possible to manage that and to mitigate that is really good. So one of the things that I think can be really helpful is to teach your child first that anxiety is not bad. There's no such thing as a negative emotion. All, whether it's anger, fear, depression, that's all information. It's like your GPS system, right? And it tells you when you're on the road or off the road. And so anxiety is, it is it's also prehistoric. Like in our DNA, we have stored survival hardware that's been in there for thousands of years around scarcity and war and being attacked and running out of things and all of that stuff. There's such a rich history in our DNA around survival that one of the first things I'll teach, well, and let's talk about parent first, and then they can teach the child, but literally you take your hand, you put your hand on your heart, skin to skin if you can, and you literally go inward and you picture your anxiety and you say, thank you so much. You are fierce and powerful and sassy, and you're always there for me. You never miss a beat. You are always there to protect me and to keep me safe. And I value that. And I value the programs that are running. And I value that it's thousands and thousands and thousands years old, this program. But you know what? It's just gym class, or it's just whatever you're scared of. And I don't need you right now, but thank you. I do love you. And I will call you when I need you. So the act of going towards instead of running away from, because that's what makes the anxiety so much worse. The more you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I don't know. Like the more you do that, the more the brain just goes, oh, they're running from something. There's clearly a lion in front of them. Like there's something actually happening right in front of them. It keeps sending that fight or flight signal. And then the brain just ends up in this loop. And it's basically the same thing for anger. It's about a 90-second loop. So you get scared of something, your body responds, then you think of that thing again, and then another 90 seconds, and then it kind of dips down a little bit, and it's another 90 seconds. So when you actually get in the habit of going towards it, And so with kids, I'll have them imagine what their anxiety looks like, right? And I'll imagine them saying, you know, I love you and thank you so much. And with each kind word, the anxiety little monster or whatever it is gets smaller and smaller. And then I have them pick it up when it's really little and put it on a stool and say, look, you're still important to me. I don't want you to go away. I just want you to let me go to the birthday party, or I just want you to let me go to, you know, do that speech that I have to do, or whatever it is. So that children actually learn how to integrate this really big feeling. And often anxious kids, they usually come by it honestly. Usually there's lots of anxious people in the same family. So when you can stop and do that yourself in front of your child, you're like, wait, I'm getting really anxious about what I'm experiencing, right? Give me 1 second. I'm going to go inward and I'm going to thank my anxiety. And you can either do it out loud or just do it and go, okay, I feel better. Very simple strategy. Relax your tongue on the bottom of your teeth. Just let your tongue go soft. Can you feel how your stomach lets go? You probably know this one, but when you relax your tongue, your stomach relaxes. And it sends a signal to the body that you don't have to protect your core organs. If my stomach is relaxed and I'm breathing slowly, then there must not be a lion in front of me, or I wouldn't be relaxing. So there's like tiny little tricks that you can teach yourself and your child to learn this process of integration.
Yeah, wow. So is it, when you're talking about the parent and the child, is it necessary for the parent to have to manage or deal with or know how to work with their own anxiety first before they can get support or help their child? Or can it be done at the same time with parent and child? Like if we, there are probably some anxious mums or dads, watching, what would your sort of advice be?
Oh, if you can do it at the same time, do it at the same time. And I think that's quite lovely because you can talk about that with your child. Like you can talk about, because the other thing that can really help, and a lot of this is modeling, is when you feel anxious, which is sometimes triggered by a thought or something you have to do. And it's sometimes generalized. It's sometimes you feel fine and then it just like comes over you. And always go towards it first. Thank you, anxiety, you're back. I know that you're trying to save me. I know you think there's danger. I love how, strong and powerful you are. It takes a little bit of time to practice doing that, but that's actually huge. And then I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about right before that?
With yourself, with your parent and your child, managing anxiety. I think it's powerful you said earlier, I'm going to divert, no emotions are bad. No, there are not good and bad emotions. And I want to just hijack that for a second because I love anyone in this group or who's watched any videos that I've done. I'm such a huge champion or championer of learning to sit in some of those uncomfortable, unpleasant, even yucky emotions like anxiety or like fear, because they're information, they're telling us something. And if we can learn to just for a little bit of time, rather than avoid or scroll or on our phone, whatever we do, just to sit and I think be in it and accept it. And like you said, hey, you're back. Hey, anxiety. Thanks. That's huge.
So many juicy things there to talk about. I remember what I was going to say and it fits.
Cool.
After you've gone towards the anxiety, you come out of your head and you go into your body. Oh, it feels like bubbles in my tummy, or it feels like my heart's racing a little bit. And you help your child or yourself to realize it's energy. All that's happening is your body is building up a store of energy in case you have to run from that lion or find a hiding spot really quickly, right? It's trying to give you enough energy. So if you can kind of think of it as energy instead of anxiety. And what's really interesting, and I'm sure you know this, but anxiety and excitement are identical to the brain. Under an MRI, it's exactly the same thing. The only difference is context, right? So even that, and this isn't going to work the first time you do it. This is something that you continually do until you start to feel like you're having some mastery over this. And back to what you were saying about that feelings are information. So if you had a friend that you were worried about and they text and you were scared you haven't heard from them. So you text them and they don't answer you. What are you going to do? You're going to text them again. And if they don't answer you, you're going to text them again. If they don't answer, you're going to phone them. If they don't answer the phone, you're going to knock on the door. Like you're going to keep trying to reach them, which is exactly what the anxiety does. So the more you try to distract yourself, drink something, smoke something, buy something, blame somebody, whatever it is that you're trying to do to escape from the anxiety is like, okay, well, I'm going to knock a little louder. I'm going to kick the door down. It will actually make sure that it hears you because it thinks it has a very important job of saving your life.
Oh my goodness. So what you have just said, I hope everyone caught that. I I remember and have now been able to understand and integrate as when I was a child, a teenager into my 20s, that my anxiety was I never addressed it. I never even was aware of it because I got very good at shoving, shoving, shoving and ignoring and being a good girl and so on. And so, as you said, it knocks a little bit louder. And before long, when I was in an anxiety inducing situation, which could have been an assembly or it was a job interview, lots of things, then I would very quickly become anxious and then I would faint. I would go
Yep.
and like literally dissociate to the max, and my body, my nervous system would say, too much, you're not saying, hey, I need a minute, hey, I feel this way, can I have a break? I would just
What was physiologically happening, it wasn't you weren't listening to it, so it took control. It hit the shut off button. Boop.
yeah.
What do? You turn it off, right? That's exactly what happened. So your anxiety will continuously speak to you until you listen. And that's why you have littles that are and at any age you can help your kids with this and you can help yourself with this. But it's so important to teach them while they're growing up how to feel their feelings, and that you got to feel it to heal it, and that you actually can metabolize and alchemize your emotions so they flow right through you and out. And I can't tell you, it's funny because we were talking about like post-COVID, but I have a lot of, because I work with adults too, but I have a lot of dads all of a sudden, in their late 50s or late 40s or even 60s, and they're experiencing anxiety for the first time in their lives, and they don't know what's happening. And part of it is, as a dad, they're stuffing all their emotions down, they're making money, they've got to work, they're trying to fix this and fix that and be available and never look, vulnerable in front of their kids. And then, when the kids get a little older, the brain goes, okay, now, how about now? And all of a sudden they're feeling this wave of emotions that are basically been packed down since they were kids. And they've never, ever, ever dealt with them. And the body will make you. It will.
Yeah. Isn't it powerful, the body and the brain and the nervous system, how it can, as you said, I love the word override. That's what it can do. If we don't step into that space and for ourselves, but for our kids, of acknowledging and accepting and saying, oh, hey, you're back again. Look, thanks. I think facing it and feeling it.
Yeah. Well, and the crazy part, and it sounds so corny, but the biggest antidote to that anxiety is love. So if you can actually feel love for your anxiety, or I teach kids, you just want to give that little anxiety monster a big old hug and tell it it's going to be okay. That feeling of love is incredibly powerful. That's the most powerful feeling that we have. That's the most powerful feeling that human beings have. And so actually, and this takes time, you're not going to suddenly be able to do this because you're like, I don't love my anxiety, it's ruining my life. But you have to eventually make this integration, and then it gets easier and easier for kids to deal with. The other thing too that I think, and I've touched on this, but I want to talk about it a little bit more, is anxiety, because it's like that dog that just keeps, upping the ante until it's sitting on your chest. It's really important as an individual, if you're experiencing anxiety, but also if your child is, to make sure that they stake some kind of claim, right? If they can't go to school, can they sit in the car for a few minutes first? If they can't go into gymnastics class, can they sit outside and watch? Can they go in for 5 minutes and come home? And kids get this. They understand that they have to push back in a loving way a little bit on their anxiety, or it will keep taking and taking. It keeps generalizing, right? And it kind of scoops up everything in the surrounding environment to protect us in case that bear comes back, or that lion comes back, or that patch of berries where there was a snake in comes back. Like, it's all about, and the brain remembers everything: the time of the year, the smell, the colors, the music that was playing, a conversation that was happening, what you wore. It remembers everything during an upsetting or traumatic event, and it stores it in your brain. And anything that comes close to that, the brain will trigger that anxiety response.
Yes. Wow. Beautiful. I think you shared so many pieces of insights and knowledge for us. One of the comments on Facebook from Mercedes on the live, she said, is all of this explained in your books?
Yes, there are big sections in the book that are on anxiety, definitely. And also we have online courses that will like walk parents through all of the details around anxiety. And there are lots of things that you can do that can really help and soothe. One of my favorite techniques, which you've probably heard about, is tapping. Do you know about tapping?
Yes.
Especially kids. Adults are like, that's weird, I'm not doing that. But kids are like, oh, yeah, that's amazing. They're so open, and it really does work. And there's lots of scientific research that shows if you do it properly, it's about a 60% drop in
Yep.
cortisol.
Mhm.
And if you learn how to do it, you can do it on your children, and that can really, really help. I remember my daughter Olivia, she's 19 now. When she was about, I don't know, 8, her friend had showed her this stupid video. It was a ridiculous cartoon video with these stick figures about these potatoes. It was called like 100 Ways to Die or something. And there's like creepy song, and then the potato got hit by a train or got whatever. She came out of, when we picked her up, looking literally like she'd seen a ghost, like just like the color drained. And you can tell when someone's anxious because it's like they're vacant and they look terrified. And I swear it was tapping that actually got us through that. I had to, she'd do, mommy, do that tapping thing again. It came back in my head, and we do the tapping, and it helped. And after a couple of weeks, she got over it, but it's a really powerful tool, and it's free.
Yes.
There's not a lot of research on it because no one makes money. Okay. It's free. You go on YouTube, there's thousands of videos. Tapping Solution is also one of my favorites. Do you have that?
You know what? Let me just quickly say, so guys, what we're talking about is called EFT tapping. Before I actually did the training to be a tapping practitioner, I actually want to redo that. I've been looking to redo the training here in Sydney because I want to do it again because it was so good. But there's this book, The Science Behind Tapping. It does touch on how to do EFT tapping, but this is actually by an Australian, Dr. Peter Stapleton. There is an abundance of research behind emotional freedom technique, also known as tapping. As Jennifer said, there's tons online. You can look at the Tapping Solution, you can look on YouTube, and it kind of combines CBT, which is what we're talking about, which is currently the gold standard of anxiety treatment, combines that with a somatic approach, as in bringing the body in where the energy and the emotion is sitting, and releases that. And the research behind the drop and the reduction in cortisol as you're doing it is phenomenal. So there's meta-analyses, there are randomized control trials. So like the tippity top of the hierarchy of psychological research and stuff. So I'm trying to get that out to parents.
Real superpower. It's an amazing thing, and kids especially, they just love it. And you could tap your kids to sleep. You can tap yourself. Like it's really a phenomenal tool. That's amazing that you're a practitioner. That's great.
Yes, yeah, tapping to sleep. I did that with my daughter a few times just recently, and she was like, "Mommy, can you do the tapping?" And she's so tiny. She's 6, but I'm like trying to, and she's like this,
like the breathing changes, and it's amazing. It's really
yes. I'm actually planning, if anyone is interested, I wanted to do a live a session in the group here in Let's Raise Emotionally Intelligent Kids on tapping. So if anyone is up for that, please put down something in the comments so I know. Let's finish off with the CALM method. I really want you to explain that for us.
Okay, so the CALM method is how to help parents connect with their children using language and compassion and empathy as medicine. So I touched on this a moment ago, but when you're in a state of deep connection and deep listening, oxytocin, opiates, and natural endorphins flood the body and flood the bloodstream, which are reward chemicals. So what oxytocin, which is sort of the most powerful of those, oxytocin, we, had a baby, you remember getting oxytocin to help stimulate labor, it's responsible for breastfeeding, but it's so much more than that. Is known as the tendon befriend hormone. There's so many things that it does, but basically it's free. You don't need a prescription. You don't run out of it. There are no negative side effects from it. And it blocks cortisol. It speeds up neuroplasticity, so it helps brains learn faster. It's very, very protective and powerful for the immune system. It makes you look younger if you have a lot of it. You're an adult. What else am I forgetting? Anyway, there's just so many reasons to do this, but it really builds resilience and helps with emotional organization. So, based on a technique called mirroring, which is a little bit different from active listening. Active listening is when people say, I understand, and that must feel really difficult. And I'm hearing that you, which is a great technique. I am not knocking that technique at all, but mirroring is different. Mirroring does not have any observational statements in it. And it's like you're tuning in emotionally on the same resonance, the same channel that other person is on. And so the whole idea is that you're seeking to understand before being understood. And that's a really hard thing for us as human beings. We like to be understood, right? And it's really powerful because if two people are trying to be understood, you know how that goes, right? So the other thing is these are very much based on therapy techniques, and I've sort of morphed them into being able to use it as a parenting technique. So the background very quickly for this is I ended up, after finishing school, the first job that I had was at a group home for street kids. So these were children who were working on the streets. They were, involved in sex trafficking. They had all been physically abused and sexually abused and deeply, deeply traumatized. And it was a group home that we were working at. And we were literally taught, don't be too nice to these kids, set the rules, don't engage with them, don't connect with them too much because they're not here very long. It was a temporary stay, and they'll try to take advantage of you if you make a connection with them. And none of that made sense to me. These kids were 11 to 16 years old, and they've been through hell and back. There's no way I'm doing that. So especially at night when it was time to put them to bed and the makeup came off and the teddy bears came out and the jammies came on and they turned back into babies, I would sit on their beds and I'd tell them bedtime stories and I would rub their backs and I would sing them lullabies. And these children who were so tough and so scary and so guarded melted into children. And I found the next day when it was time for me to get those kids to do the things that I needed them to do, they were much more likely to do it for me. And it caught the other staff's attention and they're like, oh, what's that about? She's a bleeding heart. They're going to take advantage of her. This is going to be that never happened. That never, ever happened. And I probably told this story the last time, but I remember this one little girl who was so difficult. She was really behavioral. She was really a challenging kid. And she was leaving, but she'd been there about a week and a half and she really loved the bedtime routine. In the morning, they didn't want to talk about it. Like they didn't want to discuss it at all because that's for babies. But she had particularly loved it and she was leaving to go to another setting. She was, walking, and I can see this as clear as it was yesterday. She was walking down the sidewalk with her social worker. The staff were lined up on the porch to say goodbye to her. And she paused before she got in the car and she came running back up the sidewalk right to me, put her hands on my cheeks, looked right in my eyes and said, I just want to remember this face, the face of someone who actually cared about me. So I never forgot that moment. And that was literally the beginning of connected parenting. And I knew in that moment, this is what I want to devote my life to. This is how I want to live my life. And so I started to develop the connected parenting method, which is, there's much more to it than the calm technique, but the calm technique is a pillar. So it's how you communicate with someone using the following 4 things. And this kind of helps you ground yourself in it. So step 1, before you even get to the calm, is you got to calm yourself down first. You got to drop your tongue. You got to do some breathing, do some tapping, do whatever you can before you go in and have that interaction with whoever it is you have to have an interaction with. And remember, this isn't just for your kids. This is a superpower. Mother-in-laws, co-workers, nasty neighbors, husbands, wives, this works on everyone. So you get yourself kind of grounded first. So you're responding from a place of love, not fear. And then you connect. That means your phone is down. You're using your face, you're using your body to really show that person that you are present and you are really set to understand versus being understood. And you take your agenda, which is don't you dare talk to me that way. And if you don't go in, then you're not going to go next time. And all of that, and just put it over here. You get to bring it back. That's part of being a parent. Remember, you're a frontal lobe, but just park it. That's the C. The A is affect matching. So that means the look on your face needs to pretty much match what they're feeling. It can't be exact because that's weird, but it's got to be close, right? So if your child is sad, and I probably gave this example the last time when I was on with Laura, but if you have a little one, I don't know, 5 or 6, and he says, oh, I thought Julie loved me and she was going to marry me, but she's going to marry Noah. Okay, right? It's so cute, but that does not match 5-year-old is feeling, right? So you have to find a way to genuinely make sure that on your face is a visual that matches, because that's what triggers the mirror neuron cells in the brain, which is the part of the brain that actually releases all those beautiful chemicals that I was talking about. So that's the agenda matching. I mean, the matching. And then the next one is listening. So this is where you use your words. You can paraphrase, you can summarize, you can clarify, and you can wonder out loud. And all after doing the first few things. And then the M is the mirroring. So I'll give you a quick example of what that looks like. So let's say you have a little one and I don't know, they didn't get invited to a birthday party and it's devastating and they're so upset and you're mad at that parent. You can't believe this, right? And you're having a whole reaction. So you ground yourself first. And what we often do is we either cheerlead, it's going to be okay. You know, we'll have your cousins over, we'll do something else. And we like cheerlead, which actually does exactly what we talked about at the beginning, which is avoid and fix and move the child away from the feeling that they're feeling. We get uncomfortable feeling our child's sadness and anxiety too. So we also want to feel better. But what you're teaching your child is you need someone else to help you, or you need a thing to help you, or you need a new toy to help you, or you need someone to come in and solve the problem for you. So we usually do things like that. Or if the child gets mad, it's your fault, I hate you, then we start, don't you talk to me like that. We start reacting. So what you're going to do is you're going to suspend your agenda, which is you want to make them feel better and you want to fix them somehow. And you're just going to sit there. So you literally say to them, I can't believe it. They were handing out invitations and you were standing right there and you were sure you were going to get one. And you didn't get one. Look, I'm staying right in the sadness. Now, this is very counterintuitive. Everything in your body, every cell in your body is going to want to do something else. But that moment of truly attuning and listening is the only thing that makes that other person go, that's exactly what I felt, mommy. Or, you know, when you're talking to your, I don't know, look, let's say something happened and let's say you share a neighborhood driveway or something and your car was a little bit over and your neighbor came out and I told you 50,000 times not to stay on your own time. And you come in all mad telling your spouse, unbelievable, that woman. And let's say your spouse says, well, why don't you just make sure next time your car is where it should be? Then you wouldn't have to deal with it. How would that work for you? Right? It doesn't work. You want that best friend response. What? Does that woman have nothing better to do than look through her window and see how people are parking? No, what? And you had a long day and then you had to deal with that. That's what we're looking for. Often we know the solution, or after that point, we're open to the solution. It's only 3 or 4 statements. You don't have to lie your child down and do a whole therapy session. It's literally 3 or 4 statements of deep, deep listening. I had a child once who said, because I often work with the parent and the child, not together, but at the same time, but not in the same space. And I asked this little one, like, how do you think your parents are doing? Because they're working on listening. It goes, you know what? My mommy's been listening with her heart. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're listening with your heart, right? And kids can, anybody can feel it. You can feel when someone's using a strategy or, you know, a technique on you, and when they're genuinely in that moment with you. And then you get the oxytocin, the opiates, the endorphins, all those amazing brain functions. Here's the best part. The one thing I forgot to mention is it bounces back to your brain. So you get all of those same amazing benefits when you put this into your practice. And this is, I mean, it's very difficult to explain all of it in a few minutes. There's much more to it, and it's pretty counterintuitive. Like, and a lot of people think they're doing it, but they're not doing it. And if you go and you try it on your child, it's pretty much a superpower. Like, you can bust a tantrum in seconds. You can get healthy compliance really, really quickly. It's pretty amazing. You know, it doesn't work every single time, but it's a pretty powerful tool, and you can use it everywhere in your life. And it's lovely, actually. It's a lovely way to be in the world.
Wow, that is just so heartwarming and makes, I know we feel like it is counterintuitive, but also it makes so much sense because it's the stuff that we resonate with and we want to hear from our partner or our spouse as well. So I think the calm method is brilliant. I know, like you said, we really summarized it very quickly, but your work is across all the platforms. As I said, we'll put all the links below when we finish up, and please, you know, reach out, have a look at Jennifer's books, have a look at her. I know you've got some courses and actually a free 1-hour webinar. Do you want to just let us know about that stuff before we jump off?
The 1-hour webinar really goes into more detail on the calm technique and other things you need to know when you're parenting either on your own or as a couple. Is sort of polarizing thing that tends to happen with couples. And we talk about how to be a good frontal lobe, because that's the other part. The calm technique and the nurturing and the listening is half of the equation. The other half is how to be a consistent, neutral, loving, predictable frontal lobe, which means loving limits. Right. And that's really hard and kids push back. So it's a pretty detailed webinar. And I think there's a lot of information in there for people. And then we have, so connectedparenting.com is where you can find all that information. We have a team of staff. We work with people from all over the world. And then we have online courses for, there's a lot of, I'm sure you are finding this in Australia too, but there's just limited resources. People are on wait lists. They can't get into therapies. So the course is really a way to learn and go deep into some of these techniques while you're waiting to get help. And sometimes that's all you need. And there's lots of sections in there to help you do this therapeutic parenting with your child. There's 2 versions. There's one that's just on-demand videos. I give them to people for life. So if you've bought the course, it's yours forever. I don't think it should ever run out because you're always a parent. And then the other version of the course is actually, there's a Facebook group, and I also do a coaching call once a month, and it's so interesting to have people from all over the world there. And we just launched the Family Success Formula, which is the courses, and then you actually have access to and get paired with a connected parenting therapist who works with you and helps you all the way along, and even gives you tech support if your kids are having freakouts and meltdowns. And it's a pretty neat program. And then the other thing we have is the Village, which is once a month. It's a very low cost. I think it's $69 a month. Where other connected parenting people come together with a connected parenting practitioner and practice the calm technique, which actually takes practice.
Wow. So many opportunities, so many ways in which to get this support and get this help. Doesn't matter where in the world you are, or your situation or your family. I so encourage you guys to have a look at Jennifer's work. Thank you so much for coming on and spending so much time with us. We aimed for like 20, 30 minutes and here we are.
It always goes on. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the invitation to be on. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you guys. Please keep putting in your comments or your questions. I'll sort of jump back on. And as always, thank you guys for jumping on and for watching. Parenting does not have to be, so tough and such a struggle. There's so much support out there. And especially parents of anxious kids as well, know that there's a lot of help out there. And Jennifer can't you just tell, a beautiful heart and someone with so much to give and so much knowledge and wisdom. So it's there for us to access, which is amazing. But thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.